Warning disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction, inspired by real-life emotional struggles and experiences in relationships. It does not promote hate, explicit behavior, violence, or illegal activities. It is created purely for entertainment and awareness, exploring themes of love, betrayal, and emotional growth. Viewer discretion is advised. All characters and events are fictional, and any resemblance to actual persons is purely coincidental. From the outside, our marriage looked like everything people dream about. I was 34, a software engineer living in a cozy suburb of Austin, Texas, with my wife Emma, who was not only beautiful but kind, supportive, and smart. We'd been married for 5 years, and our social media was filled with smiling photos from beach vacations, wine nights, and weekend getaways. Friends called us couple goals. But what people didn't see was what started happening behind the curtains. The slow, almost invisible cracks that began to form in our seemingly perfect world. It started with small things. Emma, who always greeted me with hugs at the door, slowly began getting too tired. Our conversations that once flowed late into the night turned into quiet dinners, with more screen time than eye contact. She started sleeping later than usual, spending more time on her phone, and often taking calls in the other room. When I asked about it, she'd say it was just work stress or her new online book club, something she never really talked about before. I wanted to believe her. I needed to. I began blaming myself. Maybe I'd gotten too caught up with work. Maybe I'd stopped being romantic or exciting. So I tried harder. I planned a surprise dinner. She seemed grateful, but distant. Her laugh felt forced. Her eyes didn't light up the way they used to. I noticed she changed her phone password too. A tiny thing, but it felt like a red flag waving directly at me. One night, we were watching a movie and she fell asleep on the couch beside me. I carried her to bed, and as I laid her down, she mumbled a name in her sleep. Ethan. I froze. I didn't know an Ethan. She never mentioned an Ethan. I brushed it off as a dream, maybe from a book or an old friend, but that name would stay etched in my brain. Still, I didn't confront her. Maybe I didn't want the truth. Maybe I wasn't ready for it. But from that moment, I started paying closer attention. I started keeping mental notes, her smiles when texting, her sudden wardrobe changes, her excuses about work calls at 10 p.m. Yet I loved her. I didn't want to ruin what we had based on suspicions alone. I needed to be sure before I said anything. I thought maybe I'm just paranoid. Maybe it's just me. And then came the night that changed everything. The night I pretended to be asleep. After that night when Emma mumbled Ethan in her sleep, something inside me quietly cracked. It wasn't a full-blown explosion, just a slow, creeping uncertainty that began to shadow every moment we shared. I found myself analyzing her every word, every glance, every text notification she quickly swiped away. And the worst part? I didn't recognize myself anymore. The Emma I knew loved lazy Sunday mornings. But now, she started waking up early, leaving the bed without even a whisper. She'd return with coffee, acting normal, too normal, as if she was overcompensating. Sometimes, I'd see her smiling at her phone, only for her to straighten her face the moment I looked over. It wasn't just a smile. It was the kind of glow someone wears when they're emotionally invested. But that light wasn't for me anymore. She started going out more often, especially on Wednesday nights. Book club, she'd say. It's mostly just wine and women gossiping. I offered to drop her off once, but she insisted she'd take an Uber because they'd often end late. I asked what book they were reading. She hesitated before saying Little Fires Everywhere. Something in her tone told me she wasn't even sure if that was a real book. The doubts started breeding theories in my mind. I remembered the name Ethan. It rang in my ears like a warning bell. I checked her Instagram for any old friend with that name. Nothing. No trace of an Ethan. I even thought about checking her phone while she showered. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. That wasn't me. That wasn't us. Instead, I started noticing other things. Her perfume changed. It used to be floral, soft like her. Now it had a sharper scent, something bold, something new. Her music changed too. She started humming unfamiliar songs around the house. She even changed her phone wallpaper from our wedding photo to a generic mountain scene. She told me it was because she was trying to be more minimalist, but it felt like she was trying to erase me, slowly, piece by piece. Still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I was afraid. Afraid that if I asked the question, I'd get an answer that would break me. So instead, I waited. I watched. Then, one night, while we were watching TV, her phone lit up. She didn't see me glance at it. The message preview said, "Can't wait to see you again." I felt my chest tighten. It was the kind of moment that confirms every fear you've been trying to silence. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I made a decision. I would wait until the next time she came home late. And that night, when she did, I would pretend to be asleep. Because sometimes, the truth whispers in the dark when it thinks no one is listening. The night I pretended to be asleep felt heavier than any night I'd ever lived through. Everything was quiet, yet my mind was screaming. I had gone to bed early, telling Emma I was exhausted from work. She gave me a soft kiss on the forehead and told me she'd stay up a bit longer to catch up on emails. I nodded and turned away, making sure she couldn't see the conflict in my eyes. In that moment, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a stranger lying beside someone I loved, praying I was wrong. I kept my breathing slow and steady. I listened closely. An hour passed. The lights in the living room finally went out. I heard the familiar soft sound of her footsteps coming into the bedroom. I kept my eyes shut. She slid into bed beside me carefully, quietly. I felt the mattress dip. I thought that was it. But then, I heard the faintest sound. Her phone unlocking. She shifted her body, trying not to move too much. I felt her back against mine. Then, after a pause, I heard her whisper, "Hey, I can't talk long." My heart started pounding so hard, I thought she'd hear it. My palms began to sweat. I stayed frozen. Her voice was low. "No, he's asleep." "Yeah, right next to me." Silence. Then I heard her laugh, soft, familiar, flirtatious. That laugh used to be mine. "I miss you too," she said, followed by another pause. "God, I wish I was lying next to you instead." I felt something inside me collapse. Not explode, collapse. It was like all the years, the memories, the promises. They all fell into a deep pit in my chest. And yet I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't ask why. She continued whispering for another few minutes. Short sentences, soft giggles, occasional silences that felt more intimate than words. Then finally I heard, "I have to go. He might wake up." She ended the call, placed the phone on her nightstand, and sighed deeply. For a moment, the silence returned. I thought she'd drift off immediately, but instead, she whispered one last thing into the darkness. "I don't know how much longer I can keep lying to him." That sentence hit harder than everything else. After that, she turned and pulled the blanket over herself. Within minutes, she was asleep. I stayed awake all night, motionless, thoughtless, feeling everything and nothing all at once. What do you do when your heart breaks in silence? When the betrayal comes not with a slap or a scream, but in a whisper meant for someone else? I realized then, I wasn't ready to confront her yet, because what I needed now wasn't revenge. It was truth, and I would find it. Morning came like a cruel reminder that life doesn't pause for broken hearts. The sun rose, the birds sang, and the world outside moved as if nothing had happened. But inside me, everything had changed. I lay still in bed, eyes open, watching the soft light creep through the curtains. Beside me, Emma was sleeping peacefully, as if the words she whispered into the darkness hadn't just torn apart the man lying inches away. I didn't confront her. Not then. Instead, I got up quietly, brushed my teeth with hands that trembled, and made coffee like I always did. She came into the kitchen a few minutes later, wearing her usual morning robe, hair messy, face still sleepy. She smiled. "Morning, babe." I nodded, forced a smile back, and said, "Morning." It was surreal. The woman who just hours ago had wished to be in another man's arms was now pouring cereal like any normal wife, acting as if she hadn't shattered something sacred. And me? I was now an actor too, faking calm, faking routine, faking that everything was fine. But under the surface, I had changed. I had seen behind the curtain, and there was no going back. That entire day, I went through the motions like a ghost. At work, I answered emails I couldn't remember typing. During lunch, I stared at my food more than I ate it. My coworkers joked around me, and I laughed along, though the sound coming from my mouth felt empty. I wasn't thinking about work, or projects, or anything else. I was replaying every word Emma had said the night before. I wish I was lying next to you instead. I don't know how much longer I can keep lying to him. Those lines kept echoing in my mind like a broken record. When I got home that evening, Emma greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and asked about my day. I smiled and said it was fine. Inside, I was screaming. I started watching her more carefully. I paid attention to her expressions when her phone buzzed. I noticed how she always took calls in the other room now, always said it was Mom or Rachel from the book club. I began keeping mental timestamps when she left, when she came back. I began building a quiet case. Not to accuse her, but to confirm what my heart already knew. I thought about checking her phone, but I still couldn't bring myself to do it. I wanted her to tell me. I wanted her to choose honesty. But I was beginning to accept the truth. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the best at lying to your face, because they know exactly what you want to believe. That night, I lay in bed next to her again. She slept with her back to me, and I lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, living with a secret that was no longer hers alone, but mine too. Took me another week to gather the courage. A week of pretending, a week of silence, a week of watching the woman I loved go through our daily life with a secret wedged between us like a shard of glass. Every meal, every laugh, every casual "I love you" felt like a performance, and I was just another audience member clapping at the end, knowing the play was a lie. I reached my breaking point on a Sunday morning. She had just come back from one of her supposed book club nights. Her hair was done differently. Her lipstick was fresh, though she insisted she had only grabbed a quick coffee after the meeting. She smelled like a cologne I didn't wear. Something inside me snapped, not out of rage, but pain. I waited until after breakfast. We were sitting on the couch. She scrolled through her phone, casually sipping tea. I turned to her and asked quietly, "Emma? Who's Ethan?" Her fingers froze mid-scroll. For a moment, she didn't look at me. Then, very slowly, she set the phone down. Her expression shifted, not into panic, but into something more dangerous. Guilt. She asked, "Where did you hear that name?" I didn't answer directly. I simply said, "Just tell me the truth." There was a long pause. Then her eyes welled up. Her voice broke slightly. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I swear I wasn't." "That's not an answer," I said softly, feeling my throat tighten. She exhaled and looked down at her hands. "Ethan is someone I went to college with. We were close back then, but we lost touch. A few months ago, he messaged me on Facebook. It started innocent, just catching up, talking about how hard things had been during the lockdown. And then, it got complicated." I sat still, barely blinking. "Complicated how?" Her eyes met mine finally, directly. "I don't love him. I don't even know if I like him the way I used to. But talking to him made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Wanted. Seen. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But I stayed calm, somehow. "So, was it emotional cheating?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. Physical." She hesitated. "No, not yet," she said. But I think it was heading that way. That sentence hurt more than if she had said yes outright. It wasn't just about what she did. It was what she was willing to do. What she was close to doing while lying next to me every night. I stood up and walked to the window. The silence between us was unbearable. "Why didn't you just tell me?" I asked. "Because I didn't want to lose you," she whispered. I turned back to face her. "But you did lose me. The moment you chose him over honesty," she cried. I didn't comfort her. In that moment, I wasn't her husband. I was just a man trying to figure out what came next, when the person he trusted most became a stranger with familiar eyes. After our confrontation, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It was filled with shadows of who we used to be, laughter echoing off the walls like ghosts, photos that now seemed to mock us, and quiet that screamed louder than any fight ever could. Emma and I didn't speak much the following day. She stayed in the bedroom most of the time, and I camped out on the couch, staring at the ceiling, wondering how a single truth could unravel 5 years of marriage. I packed a small bag the next morning, not out of rage but necessity. I told her I needed space. No dramatic goodbye, no final words, just a quiet closing of the door behind me as I walked out of the house we built together. I drove for hours with no destination, letting the road distract me from the pain gnawing at my chest. Eventually, I ended up at my brother Ryan's place. He didn't ask questions when he saw my face. He just hugged me and said, "Stay as long as you need." That night, over a few beers, I told him everything, the whispers, the name, the phone call, the confession. When I was done, he leaned back and said, "You know, people talk about cheating like it's black and white, but it's not. What she did was wrong, no doubt. But the question is, what do you want now?" I didn't answer immediately, because I didn't know. Emma had betrayed me, not just in action but in intimacy. She gave parts of herself to someone else that I thought were mine alone. And yet, a part of me still missed her. Missed the version of her before the silence, before the lies. I wasn't sure if I wanted her back or just wanted back what we had. The next day, she texted me, "Please don't give up on us. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to fix this, even if it means starting from zero." That message sat on my screen for a long time. I began to think not just about the betrayal, but about the years that came before it. The nights she took care of me when I was sick. The way she cried when my mom passed away. The time she worked double shifts to help me start my freelance business. Those memories mattered too. They didn't cancel out the pain, but they complicated the choice. Ryan said something that stuck with me. "You can forgive, but you don't have to forget. And forgiving doesn't mean staying. It just means freeing yourself from the prison of betrayal, whether you stay or go." By the end of that week, I knew I had a decision to make. Not for her, not for the past, but for me. Was our love worth rebuilding from the ruins? Or was this the end of something that had already died long before I heard her whisper his name? When I finally returned home, the house felt unfamiliar. Like walking into a place that looked like your life but didn't quite fit anymore. Emma was waiting at the door. Her eyes were red, her voice small. "Thank you for coming back," she said. I didn't hug her. I didn't say anything right away. I just walked past her, dropped my bag in the hallway, and sat down on the couch. The same couch where we had laughed together, watched movies, made plans, and where, just days ago, I had felt everything begin to collapse. "I'm not here because I've forgiven you," I finally said. "I'm here because I need to understand why." Emma sat across from me, hands folded like a child being scolded. "It wasn't about him," she said softly. "It was about me. I felt invisible, David. I didn't even know how to tell you that. Every day became routine, predictable. I felt like I was fading. And then Ethan messaged me, and suddenly I felt seen again. I know that's not an excuse. I know I broke your heart." She paused. "But I want to fix this. Not just us. Me too." We decided to try therapy. Not just couples counseling, but individual sessions as well. I needed to rebuild myself before I could rebuild anything with her. The first few weeks were brutal. Every conversation felt like walking through broken glass. We fought. We cried. There were nights I slept on the couch by choice, not because I was angry, but because I needed space to breathe. But therapy began to shift things. I learned that healing isn't clean. It's messy. It's not a straight line. It loops, it twists, it stabs you on the good days and surprises you with softness on the bad ones. Emma didn't just apologize. She changed. She started becoming transparent, not because I demanded it, but because she wanted to rebuild the trust she shattered. She handed me her phone without hesitation. She stopped making excuses. She started asking me about my day again, really asking and listening with her whole self. There were small wins, like the day I held her hand again in the grocery store without thinking about Ethan, or the first time I kissed her forehead and didn't feel the ache in my chest. But there were setbacks too. I'd hear a message tone and flinch. I'd lie awake some nights wondering if she still thought of him. But slowly, those fears stopped defining us. I learned something else, too. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give the other person. It's a choice you make for your own peace. You forgive because you want to be free, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Took months. But slowly, something new began to grow between us. Not the old version of our love, that version had died. This was something different, something honest, flawed, but maybe real. A year has passed since that night. The night I pretended to be asleep and heard the woman I loved whisper someone else's name. A year since the illusion of our perfect marriage shattered like glass. And yet, here we are, still together. But we're not the same people. We no longer talk about love as a fairy tale. We don't dress it up in grand gestures or empty words. Love now means facing the mess, the doubt, the fear, and still choosing each other anyway. There are days I look at Emma and feel the same warmth I once did when we first met. Like watching sunlight fall through the window and remembering something beautiful. But there are also days I catch myself questioning whether we made the right decision staying together. That's the thing about betrayal, it never fully disappears. It lingers like a shadow, quiet but present, always reminding you of what was once broken. But the truth is, we worked for this. Emma didn't just say sorry. She changed. She became open in ways I never imagined. She asked hard questions. She answered even harder ones. She learned how to be patient with my silence and allowed space for my anger without making it about her. And me? I learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to carry the pain differently. We still go to therapy, not because we're falling apart, but because we know how easily people do. We've learned how to talk, really talk, and listen without defending. We've learned how to fight fair, how to apologize before the damage deepens, and how to sit in discomfort without running away. One night, not long ago, we sat on the porch during a summer storm. I asked her, "Do you ever miss him?" She didn't flinch. She looked at me and said, "No, I miss who I thought I was when I talked to him. But I found her again, without him." That answer told me more than 1,000 apologies ever could. People often ask, can a relationship survive infidelity? And I don't think there's a single right answer. Some don't, some shouldn't. But for us, surviving wasn't the goal. Growing was. Because what we have now isn't about pretending everything's fine. It's about telling the truth, even when it hurts. We still have bad days. We still argue. But every night, when I turn off the lights and lie beside her, I don't pretend anymore. I'm awake. I'm present. And when she says, "I love you," I believe her. Maybe that's not the fairy tale we all imagine. But in a world full of broken promises and easy exits, maybe this is what real love actually looks like. Clapperboard, the ENDS 17.